The containment field hummed as it powered down, and Zara felt the familiar weight of gravity return to her massive frame. She kept her 4 eyes closed, listening to the soft voices speaking in the alien tongue called English. 3 days had passed since the human ship found her escape pod drifting in the void, and still she expected to wake from this dream. Vital signs are stable, a female voice said nearby. Neural activity suggests she's been conscious for several minutes. Zara's primary eyes opened first, then her secondary pair. The medical bay was smaller than those on Ketheri's ships, but cleaner somehow. Brighter. A human female with dark hair and kind eyes stood beside her bed, holding a strange device that beeped softly. "Hello," the human said, her voice gentle. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign in Zara's mind. She had never been safe, not truly. Even before the exile, she had lived with the constant reminder that her body was wrong, too big, unsuitable for the sacred act of reproduction that defined her species' worth. "You speak our language," Zara said, her voice a deep rumble that made the human equipment vibrate slightly. "Our translation matrix learned from your pod's data banks. We've been preparing to communicate with you." Dr. Chen pulled up a chair, bringing herself closer to Zara's eye level. "Can you tell me your name?" "Zara of the Third Clutch, daughter of—" She stopped. Those titles meant nothing now. She was no longer part of any clutch, no longer anyone's daughter. Just Zara. Dr. Chen nodded, making notes on her device. "Zara, we found you in an escape pod. Your ship's records indicate you were exiled." The word hit like a physical blow. Zara's 4 arms tensed, her claws extending involuntarily before she forced them to retract. "My body cannot reproduce. Among my people, this makes me useless. A drain on resources. They gave me the choice of exile or execution." "I'm sorry," Dr. Chen said, and something in her tone made Zara believe she meant it. "On Earth, we have a saying. A person's worth isn't determined by their ability to have children." Zara's secondary eyes focused on the doctor while her primary eyes scanned the room. "Earth values are different from Ketheri values. But you are not Ketheri. Why did you save me?" "Because you're a sentient being in distress. That's reason enough." The simplicity of the answer caught Zara off guard. Among her people, every action required justification, cost-benefit analysis, approval from the breeding council. This human spoke as if compassion needed no explanation. "What happens now?" Zara asked. "Will you study me? Use me as a specimen?" Dr. Chen set down her device and leaned forward. "That's entirely up to you. Our ship, the Harmony, is a research vessel. We study stellar phenomena, not people. You're free to stay as long as you need, or we can take you to the nearest inhabited system." "I have nowhere to go. No ship will accept a barren Ketheri." "Then stay with us." The offer hung in the air between them. Zara studied Dr. Chen's face, searching for deception, hidden motives, the calculation that always lurked behind Kether kindness. She found none. "Why?" Zara whispered. "Because everyone deserves a family, even if it's not the one they were born into." Family. Another word that felt strange on Zara's tongue. She had been part of the Third Clutch, but never truly belonged. Her size had always set her apart, made her different. The other Ketheri had tolerated her presence, but never embraced it. A soft chime echoed through the medical bay, and Dr. Chen glanced at her communicator. "I need to check on something, but I'll be back soon. Try to rest." As the doctor left, Zara stared at the ceiling panels, each one glowing with soft bioluminescent strips that reminded her of home. But this wasn't home. This was a human ship, populated by aliens who claimed to value her simply for existing. She thought of the breeding council's final words to her. "Your genes are flawed, Zara of the Third Clutch. You cannot contribute to our species' future. Therefore, You have no future among us. The memory still burned, but here in this strange human medical bay, surrounded by the gentle hum of alien technology, it seemed more distant somehow, less absolute. Dr. Chen returned carrying a tray of food. The smell was unfamiliar, but pleasant. Human food, she explained, setting the tray on a nearby table. We adapted some recipes based on your species' nutritional needs. Our chef, Marcus, is excited to cook for someone new. Zara pushed herself upright, her massive frame dwarfing the human-sized furniture. Your chef cooks for me specifically. He cooks for everyone on this ship. That includes you now, if you wanted to. The casual inclusion in that simple statement made something tighten in Zara's chest. She reached for the food with one of her secondary arms, tasting something that reminded her of Kethri grain pods but sweeter. It's good, she said, surprised. Dr. Chen smiled. I'll tell Marcus. He'll be thrilled. As Zara ate, she watched the doctor work at her station, occasionally glancing over with those kind eyes. For the first time in her adult life, someone was taking care of her not out of duty or obligation, but simply because they wanted to. The feeling was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. 3 weeks aboard the Harmony had taught Zara that humans were strange creatures indeed. They worked together without rigid hierarchies, shared meals without calculating resource allocation, and somehow found time for activities that served no survival purpose. They called it fun. She stood in observation deck 3, watching stars drift past the viewport while holding a cup of what Dr. Chen called coffee. The bitter liquid had become her morning ritual, something she shared with the early shift crew. Beautiful view today, said Lieutenant Torres, joining her at the window. The security officer was smaller than most humans, but Zara had learned that humans measured strength differently than her people did. Every day looks the same in space, Zara replied, though she didn't mean it naively. The consistency comforted her. Nah, look closer. See that nebula cluster. Yesterday it was purple-blue. Today it's more cyan. Stars tell stories if you know how to listen. Zara's secondary eyes focused on the distant cosmic clouds, while her primary eyes studied Torres. You see beauty in everything. Occupational hazard of being human, I guess. The casual way Torres said it made Zara's chest tighten. On the Kethri ship, conversations had purpose, direction, endpoints. Humans seemed to talk simply for the pleasure of connection. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. All senior staff to the bridge. We have a situation. Torres straightened. Duty calls. Want to come see what's happening. The invitation surprised Zara. Among her people, non-essential personnel stayed away during crisis. I'm not crew. Your family. Family sticks together during the interesting parts. Family. The word still felt foreign, but less so each day. The bridge buzzed with controlled energy as Zara followed Torres inside. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center, his weathered face grave as he studied the main display. Dr. Chen worked at a science station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Report, Torres said, taking her position. We intercepted a distress signal, Captain Rodriguez said. Kethri colony ship, approximately 2 days away at maximum warp. They're requesting immediate assistance. Zara's blood turned cold. Her primary eyes locked onto the display showing the ship's configuration. She recognized the sleek lines, the distinctive energy signature. That's the nest of prosperity, she whispered. My birth ship. The bridge fell silent. Dr. Chen looked up from her station, concern etched across her features. Zara, are you okay? She asked. What's their emergency? Zara asked instead, her voice carefully controlled. Captain Rodriguez hesitated, glancing between Zara and his crew. Reproductive plague. Something's affecting their breeding chambers. They're losing entire clutches. The irony hit Zara like a physical blow. The ship that had exiled her for being unable to reproduce was now facing the extinction of reproduction itself. Their message specifically requests human assistance, Dr. Chen added softly. Our medical technology might be able to help. And they'll accept help from the ship harboring their exile. Zara's secondary arms clenched into fists. Captain Rodriguez stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. Zara, I won't lie to you. This puts us in a difficult position. But people are dying. Children are dying. Zara closed all four eyes, remembering the younglings she had helped care for in the nursery chambers. Sweet, innocent creatures who had never learned to see her as defective. They had simply seen her as Big Zara, who told the best stories and gave the warmest hugs. The breeding council will not want me aboard their ship, she said. Then they can meet us halfway, Dr. Chen said, rising from her station. We'll dock with them, provide aid, and keep you safe. You would risk diplomatic incident for me. We protect our own, Captain Rodriguez said simply. Our own. Not their specimen, not their rescued alien, but their own. Lieutenant Torres placed a gentle hand on Zara's massive forearm. Besides, you know their systems better than anyone. We might need your help to save them. The suggestion was both terrible and perfect. Zara possessed intimate knowledge of Cathari reproductive biology, having studied it extensively in her desperate attempts to fix herself. She understood their technology, their procedures, their cultural taboos around breeding. They won't listen to me, she said. They'll listen to us, Dr. Chen said firmly. And if you're willing, you can help us help them. Zara stared at the display showing her birth ship, imagining the panic aboard. The breeding council would be desperate now, their rigid certainties crumbling as their most sacred process failed. Part of her felt vindicated. A larger part felt heartbroken. The younglings in the nursery chambers, she said quietly. Level 7, Section C, they'll be scared. We'll take care of them, Captain Rodriguez promised. All of them. All of them. Zara straightened to her full height, towering over the human crew. For the first time since her exile, she felt purpose flowing through her massive frame. Then let's go save my people, she said. Dr. Chen smiled, the expression bright with pride and determination. Plot a course for the nest of prosperity. Maximum warp. As the Harmony changed course, Zara remained on the bridge, watching the stars shift around them. She was going home, but not as the exile who had left in shame. She was returning as part of a family willing to risk everything to save strangers. The irony wasn't lost on her that the human concept of family might be exactly what her people needed to survive. The nest of prosperity hung in space like a wounded leviathan, its normally pristine hull scarred with emergency patches and flickering lights. Zara stood in the Harmony's shuttle bay, wearing the environmental suit Dr. Chen had modified for her massive frame. Her four hands trembled as she watched the Cathari ship grow larger through the viewport. You don't have to do this, Dr. Chen said, adjusting the final seals on Zara's suit. We can handle a medical emergency without you going aboard. The younglings will be terrified, Zara replied. They need someone familiar, someone who can calm them while you work. Captain Rodriguez joined them, carrying a medical kit designed for Cathari physiology. Their breeding council agreed to the meeting, but they were specific about terms. You're to remain in the nursery levels only. Zara's secondary eyes closed in pain. Even in crisis, even when dying, her people couldn't let go of their prejudices. Let them have their conditions, she said. The children matter more than my pride. The shuttle Serenity detached from the Harmony with Dr. Chen piloting and Lieutenant Torres providing security. Zara pressed against the viewport, studying her birth ship's external damage. Blast marks from containment breaches, emergency venting from failed life support systems, and the telltale energy signatures of quarantine fields. How many ships in your fleet? Dr. Chen asked. 7 colony vessels, each carrying 50,000 Cathari. We've been searching for a suitable world for 30 years. 50,000 people depending on successful reproduction, Torres said grimly. No wonder they're panicking. The shuttle bay of the Nest of Prosperity felt smaller than Zara remembered, or perhaps she had simply grown accustomed to human-scaled spaces. The atmosphere tasted of recycled air and fear pheromones. 3 Ketheri waited for them, wearing the elaborate robes of medical staff, but Zara noticed their nervous postures immediately. Dr. Chen of the human vessel, the lead medic, said in heavily accented English, I am Healer Prime Vextar. We appreciate your assistance. His gaze skittered over Zara without acknowledgement, as if she were invisible. The familiar sting of rejection flared in her chest, but Dr. Chen stepped forward smoothly. This is our xenobiology specialist, Dr. Chen said, gesturing to Zara. She'll be working with your nursery staff to ensure the younglings remain stable during our intervention. The lie was small but significant. Zara wasn't their specialist, but Dr. Chen had made her one with those simple words. Healer Vextar's discomfort was obvious. The specialist will be escorted directly to level 7. She may not deviate from that path. Understood, Zara said, her voice steady despite the pain. The corridors of her birth ship felt narrower than she remembered, pressing in on her with memories of isolation and judgment. Other Ketheri stopped to stare as their group passed, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. Zara kept her 4 eyes forward, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her discomfort. Level 7 opened to the familiar sounds of distressed younglings. The nursery chambers had always been Zora's favorite place aboard the ship, filled with tiny voices and the gentle bioluminescence of growing children. Now those voices carried notes of fear and confusion. Big Zara, a small voice called out as she entered the main chamber. Zara's heart clenched as she saw Pip, a youngling barely past first molting, pressing against the transparent wall of his containment pod. His usual bright blue coloration had faded to worry gray. Hello, little star, Zara said, approaching his pod. I'm here to help. They said you went away forever, Pip said, his tiny secondary arms reaching toward her. They said bad Ketheri don't come back. The casual cruelty of those words hit Zara like a physical blow, but she forced herself to smile. Sometimes we go away to learn new things. Now I'm back to help you feel better. Around the chamber, other younglings began to notice her presence. Their distressed calls turned to excited chittering as they recognized their former caretaker. The nursery staff, mostly lowercase Ketheri, watched with amazement as the children's stress pheromones decreased simply from seeing Zara. How do you do that? Asked tender Yixara, a young female who had always treated Zara with kindness. They've been inconsolable for days. Children don't see defects, Zara said simply. They see love. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen worked with the medical staff in the breeding chambers, her equipment humming as it analyzed the reproductive plague devastating the colony. Through the communication link, Zara could hear fragments of their discussion: genetic degradation, environmental toxins, possible solutions. The plague affects their reproductive cells at the molecular level, Dr. Chen explained over the comm. It's like their DNA is unraveling during the fertilization process. Zara listened while she moved from pod to pod, comforting frightened children with gentle touches and familiar stories. But something in Dr. Chen's description nagged at her. She had studied Ketheri reproductive biology extensively, searching for ways to fix her own defect. Dr. Chen, she said quietly into her communicator, can you send me the genetic analysis data? Zara, you're supposed to be. Please. I might see something others missed. The data flowed to her suit's display, complex helical structures and molecular chains that told the story of her species' crisis. Zara's secondary eyes scanned the information while her primary eyes kept watch over the younglings. Then she saw it, a pattern in the genetic breakdown that matched something from her own medical files. Dr. Chen, she said urgently. The reproductive plague isn't a plague at all. It's an immune response. What do you mean? The ship's environment has been contaminated with trace amounts of stellar radiation from our recent passage through the Vorthen system. For normal Kethri, it causes minor cellular stress. But during reproduction, when genetic material is most vulnerable, it triggers a defensive response that destroys the embryos. Silence on the comm channel. Zara, Dr. Chen said slowly, how could you possibly know that? Because I've been exposed to similar radiation levels my entire life. My reproductive defect isn't a genetic flaw, it's an adaptation. My body evolved to survive in conditions that would kill normal reproductive processes. The implications hit the channel like a thunderbolt. Zara, the exile, the outcast, the one deemed unworthy of reproduction, might be the key to saving her entire species. The revelation sent shockwaves through both ships. In the nest of Prosperity's main laboratory, Healer Prime Vextar stared at the genetic analysis with 4 eyes wide in disbelief, while Dr. Chen explained Zara's theory with growing excitement. Impossible, Vextar said, his voice carrying the strain of someone whose worldview was crumbling. Zara of the third clutch is barren. Defective. Her genetic patterns show clear reproductive dysfunction. What if it's not dysfunction? Dr. Chen asked, pulling up comparative data on her portable display. What if it's evolution? Zara remained in the nursery level, but she could hear the heated discussion through the communication link. The younglings had settled into peaceful sleep cycles, soothed by her presence, while she worked at a small terminal analyzing her own genetic data alongside the plague patterns. The radiation exposure timeline matches, she said quietly into her communicator. The nest of Prosperity passed through the Vorthen system 18 months ago. The first cases of reproductive failure began 16 months ago. My medical files show I was exposed to similar stellar radiation during a solar storm when I was developing in the clutch chambers. That's just coincidence. Vextar protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the channel from the harmony. Dr. Chen, can we synthesize whatever protective factors Zara has developed? Not synthesize, Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. But we might be able to replicate the conditions that created them. Zara, I need you to run a full genetic comparison between your reproductive cells and the samples from affected individuals. I cannot, Zara said softly. The equipment limitations? Dr. Chen asked. No. The Breeding Council forbade any detailed analysis of my reproductive system. They declared it unnatural to study defective genetics. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Vextar's breathing became audible over the comm, rapid and stressed. Healer Prime, Dr. Chen said carefully, I need access to Zara's complete medical files, including the restricted reproductive data. Absolutely not. The Breeding Council. The Breeding Council is facing extinction. Zara interrupted, her voice carrying new authority. Every day you delay, more younglings die. Are your rules more important than their lives? In the nursery chamber, Pip stirred in his pod, making soft sounds of distress. Zara reached out to comfort him, her massive hand gentle against the transparent barrier. Big Zara, Pip whispered, why are the adults scared? Because sometimes being different feels frightening, Zara said. But different can also mean special. Unique. Necessary. Dr. Chen's voice came through the comm with new urgency. Zara, I'm detecting changes in the ship's radiation levels. Whatever's causing the reproductive plague is getting worse. The stellar winds from Vorthen are intensifying, Zara confirmed, checking her suit's environmental readings. The ship's shielding wasn't designed for prolonged exposure to this type of radiation. How long do we have? Captain Rodriguez asked. Zara ran quick calculations based on the degradation patterns. At current exposure rates, complete reproductive failure within 6 days. After that, The radiation will begin affecting other biological systems. The entire colony fleet could be sterilized, Dr. Chen said grimly. Vextar's resistance finally cracked. Access granted to all medical files. Emergency protocols override breeding council restrictions. The data flowed to Dr. Chen's equipment. 30 years of Zara's medical history, including the detailed reproductive analysis that had branded her as defective. But now, viewed through the lens of radiation adaptation rather than genetic failure, the patterns told a different story. Remarkable, Dr. Chen breathed. Zara, your reproductive cells have developed specialized protein structures that protect genetic material during synthesis. It's like natural radiation shielding at the molecular level. Can we replicate it? Zara asked. Not quickly enough. But Dr. Chen paused, and Zara could almost hear her thinking. We might be able to create a temporary treatment using your genetic template as a guide. You mean using her as a donor? Vextar said, the implications clear in his voice. Zara closed all 4 eyes. The irony was almost unbearable. The people who had exiled her for being unable to reproduce now needed her reproductive biology to save their species. What would that involve? She asked quietly. Genetic material extraction and synthesis, Dr. Chen explained. We use your adapted cells as a template to create temporary immunity factors. It would be intensive, dangerous, potentially. We'd be pushing your biology into territory we don't fully understand. Zara looked down at Pip, sleeping peacefully in his pod. Around the chamber, dozens of other younglings rested in similar containment units, their lives dependent on the adults finding a solution. If I don't do this, they all die, she said. Zara, Dr. Chen's voice was gentle, this has to be your choice. No one can ask you to risk your life for people who rejected you. They didn't reject me, Zara said, surprising herself with the words. They rejected what they didn't understand. Fear makes people cruel, but it doesn't make them evil. Lieutenant Torres's voice joined the conversation. Zara, if you do this, it changes everything. Your people will have to acknowledge that their understanding was wrong. Maybe they'll find new ways to reject what doesn't fit their worldview. Zora stood, her massive frame casting shadows across the nursery chamber. But that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to these children. She moved to the communication panel and activated ship-wide broadcast. This is Zara of the Third Clutch, she said, her voice carrying through every corridor of the nest of prosperity. I was exiled because my body was deemed too flawed to contribute to our species' survival. Today, I offer that same flawed body as the key to saving us all. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Voices flooded the communication channels, some grateful, some disbelieving, some still carrying old prejudices. But underneath it all, Zara heard something new. Hope. Dr. Chen, she said, I'm ready to begin. The procedure took place in the Harmony's medical bay, with both ship's crews working in unprecedented cooperation. Zara lay on a specially reinforced bioved, while Dr. Chen and her team prepared the genetic extraction equipment. Through the viewport, she could see Kethra shuttles arriving from across the colony fleet, carrying desperate families and their failing younglings. Are you certain about this? Dr. Chen asked, running final diagnostics on the extraction array. Once we begin, I can't guarantee what the genetic restructuring might do to your system. Zara's secondary eyes watched the monitor displaying her vital signs, while her primary eyes focused on Dr. Chen's concerned face. I've never been certain about anything in my life, but this feels right. Lieutenant Torres stood at a security station, monitoring both ships for signs of trouble. The breeding council is requesting permission to observe the procedure. Denied, Dr. Chen said firmly. This is medical treatment, not a spectacle. They're threatening to revoke cooperation if they can't verify the process, Torres added. Zara's voice was steady despite the neural interface probes being attached to her nervous system. Let them observe. They need to see what they almost destroyed. The extraction began with a deep thrumming that resonated through Zara's massive frame. She felt her cellular structure being analyzed, mapped, and gradually harvested at the molecular level. The pain was bearable, but the sensation of her essence being drawn out felt strange and violating. Genetic template stable, announced Dr. Kim, the Harmony's xenobiologist. The radiation-adapted proteins are maintaining structure during extraction. Through the medical bay's transparent walls, Zara could see a group of Kethri observers, including several members of the breeding council. Their expressions ranged from fascination to disgust as they watched their former exile become their savior. First synthesis batch complete, Dr. Chen reported. Beginning compatibility testing with affected reproductive samples. The process moved with agonizing slowness. Each batch of synthetic immunity factors had to be tested, refined, and verified before moving to the next stage. Meanwhile, reports continued to arrive from the colony fleet about deteriorating conditions and increasing casualties. Batch 7 showing 93% effectiveness, Dr. Kim announced. Radiation damage to genetic material reduced to acceptable levels. Zara felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her as another extraction cycle completed. Her body was working overtime to regenerate the harvested biological material, pushing her metabolism to dangerous limits. Vital signs are dropping, Dr. Chen said, concern evident in her voice. We need to slow the extraction rate. No, Zara said firmly. How many more batches do you need? At least 20 to treat the entire colony fleet. Then we continue. Dr. Chen started to protest, but Captain Rodriguez's voice interrupted over the intercom. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. The main display activated, showing a Kethri child, one of the first to receive the experimental treatment. The youngling's genetic patterns showed clear signs of recovery, damaged DNA repairing itself under the influence of Zara's adapted immunity factors. It's working, Dr. Chen whispered. More reports flooded in as the treatment spread through the fleet. Reproductive systems that had been failing for months began to stabilize. Younglings who had been dying started to recover. The colony fleet, which had faced extinction, suddenly had hope. But the success came at a cost. Each extraction cycle weakened Zara further, her massive body struggling to keep up with the demands being placed on it. 15 batches complete, Dr. Kim reported. But Zara's cellular regeneration is falling behind the extraction rate. I can handle 5 more, Zara said, though her voice was noticeably weaker. You're killing yourself to save people who threw you away, Torres said bluntly. Zara's secondary eyes found Torres through the forest of medical equipment. I'm saving children who never had the chance to know better. That's different. The extraction continued, each cycle more difficult than the last. Zara's vital signs fluctuated wildly as her body fought to maintain stability. Dr. Chen worked frantically to balance the extraction rate with Zara's declining health. 18 batches, Dr. Kim announced. Colony fleet reporting 98% treatment success rate. 2 more, Zara gasped. We need 2 more for complete coverage. Zara, your nervous system is beginning to shut down, Dr. Chen said urgently. If we continue, you might not recover. Through the observation windows, Zara could see the Kethri delegation watching with rapt attention. Some had expressions of genuine concern, but others seemed more interested in the scientific implications than her well-being. Dr. Chen, she said quietly, if I die saving my people, will you make sure they remember it correctly? You're not going to die, Dr. Chen said fiercely, but if I do, will you tell them that the defective one chose to give her life for children who deserved better than extinction? Before Dr. Chen could answer, one of the Kethri observers stepped forward. It was tender Yixara from the nursery levels, her young face streaked with tears. Please, she said in broken English, enough extraction. We have sufficient treatment for critical cases. Save Big Zara. Other Kethru voices joined hers, including some from the Breeding Council. The ship that had once unanimously voted for Zara's exile now pleaded for her life. 19 batches, Dr. Kim reported. Enough to treat 96% of the colony fleet. Zara looked around the medical bay at the human and Kethri faces surrounding her. For the first time in her life, she was the center of attention not because she was different, but because she mattered. Stop the extraction, she whispered. Dr. Chen didn't need to be told twice. The equipment powered down, and blessed silence filled the medical bay. Zara's vital signs gradually stabilized as the immediate stress on her system ended. The remaining 4%, she asked weakly, will be managed with conventional treatments and isolation protocols. Dr. Chen said, You've done enough, Zara. More than enough. As the medical teams began administering the life-saving treatments across the colony fleet, Zara drifted into unconsciousness, exhausted but oddly peaceful. She had found her purpose in the most unexpected way, and for the first time since her exile, she felt truly home. 3 months later, Zara stood in the Harmony's observation lounge, watching the Kethru colony fleet prepare for departure. The 7 massive ships had been repaired and refitted, their reproductive systems now protected against stellar radiation. Children played in the nursery chambers, their laughter carrying through the communication channels between ships. Second thoughts? Dr. Chen asked, joining her at the viewport. Many, Zara admitted. The Breeding Council has formally apologized and offered me a position as Chief Genetic Advisor. Full honors, unlimited resources, my own research facility. That's what you always wanted, isn't it? Recognition from your people. Zara's secondary eyes tracked the movement of maintenance shuttles between the colony ships, while her primary eyes remained fixed on Dr. Chen's reflection in the transparent aluminum. I thought it was. But recognition feels hollow when it comes only after you've proven your worth through sacrifice. Behind them, the observation lounge filled with the evening shift change. Lieutenant Torres waved as she passed, carrying a cup of coffee and a data pad. Engineer Martinez called out a greeting in his mixture of Spanish and English that had become so familiar. Chef Marcus appeared with a tray of the evening meal, including the specially prepared Kethra dishes he perfected over the past months. Besides, Zara continued, I already have everything I always wanted. Which is a family that values me for who I am, not what I can produce. Dr. Chen smiled, but Zara could see the sadness behind it. The Harmony will seem quiet without you, whichever choice you make. Who says I'm leaving? The hope that flashed across Dr. Chen's face was worth everything Zara had endured. The colony fleet will survive without me. They have the treatment protocols, the genetic templates, and most importantly, a new understanding that different doesn't mean defective. Zara turned away from the viewport to face her chosen family. My birth species needed me to save them. My chosen species needs me to explore the universe with them. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All hands, prepare for departure. The Kethru colony fleet is ready to resume their journey. As the Harmony began to separate from the massive colony ships, Zara felt a familiar tightness in her chest. But this time, it wasn't the pain of rejection. It was the bittersweetness of choosing one family over another. Her communicator chimed with an incoming message from the nest of prosperity. The image of tender Yixara appeared, now wearing the robes of a senior genetic counselor, a position created specifically to implement the new understanding of genetic diversity. Big Zara, she said, using the childhood name that had become a term of endearment throughout the fleet. The younglings wanted to say goodbye. The screen filled with dozens of small faces, children who had been saved by Zara's sacrifice and who would grow up in a world where genetic differences were celebrated rather than condemned. Pip, now healthy and vibrant, pressed close to the camera. Will you come visit us when we find our new world? He asked. If the universe allows our paths to cross again, Zara promised. We'll name our first city after you, another child chimed in. Zara's Haven, where everyone belongs. The weight of their words settled over Zara like a warm blanket. She had gone from being the exile who couldn't reproduce to the savior whose legacy would be written in the very foundations of Ketheri civilization. As the communication ended, Dr. Chen placed a gentle hand on Zara's massive forearm. Any regrets? Only one, Zara said. I wish it hadn't taken a crisis for them to see my value. But perhaps that's how all meaningful change happens, through necessity rather than enlightenment. The days that followed brought a new rhythm to life aboard the Harmony. Zara found herself in the unique position of being the ship's first permanent non-human crew member, a role that required adaptation from everyone. The humans, characteristically, rose to the challenge with enthusiasm rather than concern. Her quarters were redesigned to accommodate her size and environmental needs. The mess hall installed a special preparation area for her dietary requirements. Most importantly, her official position was created, Xenocultural Liaison, a role that acknowledged her unique perspective as someone who had lived between two worlds. Your first assignment, Captain Rodriguez said, handing her a data pad in his ready room, is to help us prepare for first contact with the Veltar Confederation. They're a rigid hierarchical society that values genetic purity above all else. Zara's 4 eyes scanned the preliminary reports. The Veltar sounded disturbingly familiar. Another species that had organized their entire civilization around reproductive biology and genetic conformity. They remind me of my people, she said carefully. Exactly why we need your insight. How do we approach a society that might reject diplomatic contact based on genetic incompatibility? Zara considered the question, drawing on her painful experience with such prejudices. We show them strength first, compassion second. Societies built on genetic superiority only respect power. Once we establish ourselves as equals, then we can demonstrate that diversity creates strength rather than weakness. The Harmony's approach to the Veltar homeworld 3 weeks later proved Zara's analysis correct. The initial reception was cold and dismissive, with Veltar officials barely concealing their disgust at humanity's genetic chaos and their horror at Zara's presence among the crew. This creature represents everything wrong with your species, the Veltar prime geneticist declared during the first diplomatic meeting. Tolerance of genetic deviation leads to societal collapse. Zara, sitting at the conference table in a specially designed chair, met the alien's gaze steadily. I represent survival. My genetic deviation saved 50,000 lives when conventional genetics failed. Impossible. Genetic purity is the foundation of biological success. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed miracles. Would you like to see the data? Zara's genetic adaptations allowed her people to survive radiation exposure that would have sterilized their entire species. The presentation that followed was masterful. Dr. Chen, supported by Captain Rodriguez and Lieutenant Torres, demonstrated how genetic diversity had repeatedly saved species from extinction while genetic purity had led to evolutionary dead ends. Zara provided the living proof, a being whose defects had become salvation. Your own genetic records show increasing susceptibility to stellar radiation, Zara observed, studying the Veltar biological data they had provided. Your pursuit of genetic purity has eliminated the natural variations that could protect you from environmental changes. The Veltar delegation exchanged nervous glances. Their homeworld orbited a star showing signs of increasing radiation output, and their population had indeed been experiencing declining birth rates. What would you recommend? The prime geneticist asked reluctantly. Embrace your outcasts, Zara said simply. The individuals you've rejected for genetic impurity may carry the adaptations your species needs to survive. The transformation in Veltar society didn't happen overnight, but it began with that conversation. Within months, their genetic case system started to crumble as they realized that survival required diversity, not purity. The diplomatic success established the Harmony as a premier first contact vessel, with Zara's perspective proving invaluable for understanding rigid societies. But the greatest change was personal. Zara found herself not just accepted, but celebrated for her unique viewpoint. Her quarters became a gathering place where crew members sought her advice on everything from interpersonal conflicts to scientific challenges. Her size, once a source of shame, became an asset in negotiations with larger species. Her experience with rejection made her invaluable in helping others who felt different or isolated. One evening, as the Harmony traveled between star systems, Zara stood in her favorite observation lounge watching the cosmic dance outside. Dr. Chen joined her, as had become their habit. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found your escape pod?" Dr. Chen asked. "Every day," Zara admitted. "I would have died alone in space, convinced that I was worthless. Instead, I discovered that worth isn't determined by the circumstances of your birth, but by the choices you make with the life you're given. The crew's taking bets on how many more species you'll help revolutionize their understanding of genetics." Zara's laugh rumbled through the observation deck. "As many as needed. There are countless individuals across the galaxy who have been told they're defective, worthless, unable to contribute. If my story can help even one of them realize their true value, then every moment of pain was worth it." Dr. Chen smiled, but her expression grew thoughtful. "You know, when we first found you, I thought we were rescuing you. I realize now that you were the one doing the rescuing." "We rescued each other," Zara corrected. "That's what families do." As the stars wheeled past the viewport, Zara reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had begun as an exile, rejected by her own people for failing to meet their narrow definition of value. Now she was a bridge between worlds, helping species across the galaxy understand that diversity was strength, that difference was valuable, and that everyone deserved a family. The Harmony continued its journey through the cosmos, carrying its crew of explorers, scientists, and one very special xenocultural liaison who had learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can receive is the chance to give everything you have to save others. In the end, Zara had found her purpose not in spite of her differences, but because of them. And in the vast expanse of space, where countless species struggled with their own prejudices and fears, the Harmony served as a beacon of hope, proof that when beings choose to see strength and diversity and value in difference, miracles become possible.